break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. Break it down with the proper perspective.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing out there in YouTube land? How y'all doing out there in Instagram, TikTokville? How y'all doing out there in fan base land? How y'all doing? What's going on? This is Shabazz with the proper perspective. How y'all doing? What's going on tonight? Happy Black History Month. This is the last day of Black History Month, officially at least. How y'all doing? Thank you for tuning in. If you on fan base, if you watching me on fan base, Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, please, I know you love your social platforms, but I need you to come on over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective. That's my real official home base. That's where I get everything cracking. That's where I share my screen and do all my official things. I'm just talking on the phone on the other locations, but I do appreciate you for tuning in. We are going to have some fun tonight, I think, and I hope. We are going to have some fun tonight, I think, and I hope. Tonight, I'm still going to do my regular shout out. I'm still going to embed some African wisdom into the show, but I'm specifically doing this as sort of a clap back. Tonight, I'm clapping back, trying to get these little screens situated the right way. I hope y'all can hear me. Let me do a mic check. Let me make sure that my mic check is right, because last time I was up on here. Okay, yeah, it looks like the mic is fine. So you may hear a little bit of a double talk, some feedback just for a hot second, but it won't be that long. I'm just doing my double checks. I'm trying to give a couple of people some time. Everybody is telling me, Instagram and Facebook and fan base and all this other stuff is telling me we're currently sending out notifications for your show. So before I really get it cracking and get it started, I'm gonna hold up a second just to give people a couple of seconds, a couple of moments to get on point. Again, like, share, and subscribe this channel. Like, share, and subscribe this video. I got plenty of other videos for you to check out. So check out my podcast, my playlists, different takes, different positions, different angles, different stories. Spent some time in Ghana, so I got a whole playlist about life in Ghana. I got a whole playlist about traveling and a playlist about various political topics. Doing Black History this month because it is February. Shout out to Carter G. Woodson. That's how we kicked it off this month anyhow. But like, share, and subscribe this channel, these videos. I need your support. Hit the like button. Hit the bell for the notifications. And I do specifically mean, on YouTube. Hit me up on youtube.com/@theproperperspective. But what are we talking about tonight? We are talking about the Bible. Now, you may be used to some things getting some topics, some hot topics jumping off, some controversies jumping off when it comes to the Bible. I'm not necessarily going to try and do that. I'm not here to convert anybody. If you a Bible believer, more power to you. If you a Bible hater, more power to you. I'm not trying to change nobody's mind, at least as far as that's concerned. What am I trying to do? Let's sit back a little bit. I did a podcast before. I did a show on reparations. Now, I was just talking about reparations as a general thing, as the principle that Black people are owed. No biggie. And I had this particular individual who decided he was going to write 18 pages worth of rebuttals to put me in my place and let me know that my request for, my desire for, my belief in reparations is totally outlandish. So what I decided to do, at first I was going to ignore it, but in particular, because he tried to hit me with the Bible, he pulled up quite a few biblical passages trying to get me to see God's word suggests that we don't deserve reparations. Now, I'm not in that respect, I'm not a religious person. When I did my original stream, I said nothing about the Bible. Now, a few years ago, before I got into this podcasting thing, I was one of those hot topic debating type dudes, and I really would have went to town because I used to love to debate the Bible. But I've grown past that. I got a better, a greater, a different understanding about things now. So I try to stay away from religious topics. I try to stay away from religious topics. This I just couldn't help. 18 pages. 18 parts, 18 sections. He everything that he posted was 1 of 18, 2 of 18, 3 of 18. So he just kept going and going and going. So I decided, at first I was just going to ignore it. You got to have a troll here and there, so it is what it is. But I went back and read his dissertation, and I decided I'm going to do something with this. I'm going to have some fun with this. So I have entitled tonight's conversation, "The Bible Justifies Reparations, a Rebuttal to Fried Fish," because that was the account name. So let me start off by just saying this. Habari Ghani, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Hotep to all my ancient Kemetic brothers. Peace to all the positive people in the universe. Akwaba, brothers and sisters. Thank you for tuning in. Asante Sana. Maybe you'll get the hint. I'm really into Pan-African type cultures and ideas. Welcome to today's Black History Lectures, Black History Discussion, Black History Podcast, where we address a common but deeply flawed argument: the idea that the Bible opposes reparations. We will be taking the claims of one such individual who goes by the name of Fried Fish and systematically try to dismantle his commentary using biblical passages. So let's dive in. But before we go, like, share, and subscribe this podcast. If you think this is going to be interesting or entertaining, like, share, and subscribe this podcast. If you know anybody that's interested, if you know people that's deeply committed to the Bible and they too believe that there's biblical passages that say we should not have reparations, like, share, and subscribe. Like and share and share and share alike this podcast. Now, first and foremost, I want to give reference to one leg of our historical ethnicity and heritage. What am I talking about? What do I mean by that? On my show, when I am having conversations, when I am having discussions, and when I do my research, I like to know, because we are an African people, and African people having an American experience, because we are an African people, I like to dive deep into the cultures from which we came. Now, a lot of times people will say, now, for instance, if you're into hip hop, then you know one of the common pro-Black, woke, conscious hip hop quotes, maybe coming from Public Enemy, not them themselves, they sampled it, was, "Once we got over here, we were robbed of our nation, robbed of our language. We lost our culture, our religion, our God. And many of us, by the way we act, we even lost our mind." Now, I love that quote. But that quote inspired me to start digging and doing research. And yeah, I'm one of those brothers that believe that the DNA is real. I'm one of those brothers that believe that DNA testing is real. I know some of us don't, but I do. And I took my DNA test. I know from whence at least one side of my family tree extends from that African continent. And I have done the research historically, lineage based in one respect. And I know that we come from quite a few West African groups. So what I'd like to do is give reference to those West African groups. So for a hot second, I'm going to share with you a proverb from the Igbo group of Nigeria, because a lot of us descend from the Igbos. Now, if you really go and do the research, you'll find, especially depending on the state you're from, some of the ethnicities got clustered into certain states. Igbo were very heavy in Virginia. That's where I'm from. That doesn't mean all Virginia black people have some Igbo, but Igbo was very heavy in the Virginia area. So I think that's rather interesting, at least for me on a personal tip. But like I said, don't let me digress too much. So this Nigerian proverb, and I think it relates to tonight's topic. The child who knows how to wash his hands will eat with the elders. That's an Igbo proverb. The child who knows how to wash his hands will eat with the elders. Now, what does that mean, though? Sometimes African proverbs, sometimes they'll slap you in the face with obvious clarity. And sometimes you got to go doing some digging to figure out what they mean. This one, to me at least, I feel like this one is a little deeper. You got to get beneath the surface in order to understand this one. Shout out to Calazo7953 for joining me on Instagram. Shout out. Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, I can't read all of the names on TikTok, so I'm gonna have to be a little shortchanged on that respect. I can't read all those names, but I do appreciate you being here. I would love it if you came over to youtube.com/@the-proper-perspective. I really need those likes. I really need more subscriptions to my channel anyhow. So that's why I keep doing this little commercial of mine. But the meaning of this proverb, the child who knows how to wash his hands will eat with the elders. It means that knowledge and wisdom elevate you above your enemies and put you in a position of power. Now, why does it mean that? Knowledge and wisdom can easily be symbolized by water and washing. Even from a biblical perspective, people went and jumped in the river to get baptized. Why? Because of that new knowledge and wisdom that gets bestowed upon them. And the seat of power, the elevated position of power, is eating with the elders. In traditional African culture, everybody don't get to eat with the elders. You got to prove your worth. You got to prove that you get that honor. And one thing that you have to do to prove that you get that honor is, wash your hands. Now, it may sound a little simple or silly or whatever, but think about it. Look at where we live at. How many videos have been spread around Instagram and other social media platforms where you get envelopians talking about they don't wash their hands and they proud of it? Some of them talk about they don't even use soap. Some of them talk about they don't use wash rags. So washing your hands is not a simple gesture. Anyhow, I digress. So the Igbo wisdom for tonight. I washed my hands. I'm ready to eat with the elders. And it just so happens that fried fish is what's on the menu. So now, section 1, I'll have you know, like I said, this person, I don't know their race, I don't know their ethnicity. Shout out to only one Lisa Love for joining the Instagram. Shout out. Let's see. Who else? Oh, fan base. Yeah, I'm on fan base, but fan base don't really be popping like that. I don't know why. But let's see. So this person, I don't want to say brother because I don't know if you're a brother. This person, fried fish, he came at me, like I said, with 18 passages, 18 responses, 18 dissertation paragraphs. His first claim was reparations is about resentment, not justice. How dare you try to work your life and live your life in resentment? That's not what the Bible asks for. Shout out to Rashad Ogun, especially that Ogun part. Rashad Ogun Chi. Shout out to Rashad Ogun Chi Amaru. That's a long name, brother. Anyhow, like I said, so his first claim was that reparations are about resentment, not justice. Now, again, let me preference this. I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in the Bible, or at least in a sense, let me correct that. I don't believe in the holiness and the sanctity of the Bible. Now, that doesn't mean that I shun the Bible. That doesn't mean that I burn the Bible. But I don't believe that a person is mandated or obligated to live their life by the Bible. But interestingly enough, apparently fried fish does. And that's why I'm taking him to the carpet, so to speak. He believes that the Bible should be used as a justification for how you live. Okay. Shout out to Tansy Busby, who joined up on Instagram. Please come over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective. Even if you want to just stay on your other platform, hit my YouTube page and hit the like button and hit the subscribe to the channel button so I can at least get a little bit of credit on that end. But you can come on back and continue staying on Instagram and TikTok and et cetera, fan base and whatnot. So this person believes that we should live our lives based on biblical ideologies. Okay, like I said, I'm not trying to convert nobody. But since he wants to bring up biblical passages and he says reparations are about resentment, not justice, well, I will have you know, fried fish, Exodus 22:1 says, if someone steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, they must pay back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. So this is just one passage now. We getting this started. So clearly, the situation, the scenario, the historical record suggests and shows, verifies and validates that Africans were stolen and brought over here. Yes, now there may have been some, most were kidnapped and tricked. There may have been some that were sold, but you never have the right to sell a human. So even though some were sold, they were sold against their own individual will. Once again, that's tantamount to theft. So if the Bible will tell you that stealing an ox and stealing a sheep requires repayment, hey, this ain't about resentment. There's no resentment in that statement for Exodus. If biblical justice requires restitution for a single stolen ox, can't you just imagine how much would be required for a stolen human, for stolen labor? Come on now. Come on now. So if you want to apply biblical knowledge, if you want to apply biblical logic, I'm down with that. I feel very comfortable in the idea that your Bible will wrap you up into the reparations movement more than the political legal aspects of the argument. Leviticus 6:4-5. I hope I'm not sounding like them Black Hebrew Israelites. I ain't got nobody reading it for me off the side, so I should be good. If they have sinned and realized their guilt, if they have sinned, well, absolutely. The whole debacle of slavery was a sin. Now, have they realized their guilt? I know who I'm talking about. They must return what they have stolen or taken by extortion, or what was entrusted to them, or the lost property they found. So no matter how they acquired it, no matter how they acquired the stolen goods, these African lives, they must return it. They must make restitution in full and add a 5th of the value to it. So you stole us. You stole the Africans. You acquired them in completely sinful manners, complete guilt-ridden manners. And your Bible tells you you must make restitution. Now, if you just don't like the word reparation, if that R word hurts your soul and your spirit, fried fish, then okay, we can call it restitution. The U.S. government owes Black people restitution. Does that make you feel better? And we will simply attach the word restitution to what the U.S. law calls reparations. But y'all owe it to us, according to the Bible, according to biblical theology, by adding a fifth of the value where it started from. This will still align with 40 acres and a mule, whether you're talking literally 40 acres or and a mule, or today's modern equivalent to 40 acres and a mule. The Bible commands repayment for all stolen goods, let alone centuries of unpaid labor. That unpaid labor is stolen goods. So that's one of them. That's like, okay, that's my first claim. That's my first response to Mr. Fried Fish. But it's not just to him, because what I recognize is that Fried Fish is trying to hit me up with all of these arguments. He is representative of quite a few people. I would say black and white, but I'm gonna give a little bit of leeway and grace to some black people, because I really think, maybe foolishly, I think most of us believe that we are owed and due reparations. Although all of us don't. I've had some conversations with a couple, but I ain't touching on that. The idea is, like I said, this guy wants to use the Bible to show me that the Bible says reparations aren't owed. And I'm like, I don't know how you can come to that conclusion, but I'm going to keep going. Because now his second argument was, the Bible says children should not suffer for their ancestors' sins. Now, this is a very interesting one. I had not heard the other one as often, but I've heard this one, that the sins of the father shall not be visited upon the son. Now, as I break this down, I might have to say again, I'm not a Bible believer, but it might be relatively easy to find some contradictions in this book. But maybe that's another story altogether for another night. We're celebrating Black history by making sure we understand, no matter where you fall on the religious spectrum, that holy book can be used to justify your request for reparations. Exodus 34:7, and y'all can look it up and tell me if I'm wrong. Y'all can look it up. Exodus 34:7 says, yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. Clearly, this is talking about the Creator, the Most High, the Supreme, Allah in Islamic Arabic fashion, in English and in Jehovah, Yahweh, God, however you so choose to call it. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. Well, who you think the guilty are? Even if the guilty ain't all white people, the guilty is definitively Uncle Sam, the U.S. government. You bought it, you broke it, you fix it. He does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation. So Fried Fish trying to tell me the Bible says children should not suffer for their ancestors. The fact that he used that passage or used that idea from the Bible, first off, he already admits that there is a problem. The statement alone admits that there's some suffering that needs to be addressed. He just doesn't like the fact that he's on the end of the people who need to pay. But yet again, his book says, oh, y'all gonna pay. His book says you are the children of the parents who sinned. You and those that you procreate, down to the third and fourth generation, all of y'all have to pay. So again, ladies and gentlemen, now, I would think maybe if you're already accustomed to, if you're a deep diver into the Bible, you may know all of this. You may be sitting here like, I heard that before. I already know that. But I know a lot of people don't know this. So that's another reason why I'm doing it. If you're a Bible believer, I think you should know these. I don't think he would have been as comfortable throwing these out there if he thought, either for me or for the people that might happen upon my page, if he thought that the general collective is already well aware of passages like this, I don't think he would have felt so free and encouraged to leave all of these comments. But again, come on over to youtube.com/at the proper perspective. Come on over to youtube.com/at the proper perspective. I need you to hit that like button, family. I need you to hit that bell for notifications. Now, as I proceed to give you what you need, shout out to Defend Humanity, who has joined on Instagram. 2 Samuel 21, 1 to 14. That's the whole section. But in this section, King David made amends for Saul's past sins against the Gibeonites in order to end a famine in Israel. Why do I bring this up? This is an example. This is a story. This is an illustration. This proves that God expects nations, not people, not citizens, not taxpayers. Nobody's asking John up the street. Nobody's asking Tom at Walmart to go into their pocket and to empty out their TSP or their 401k or their savings account so that we could get reparations. But this passage proves that God expects nations to correct historical injustices. King David, the man at the top of the food chain in that Israel narrative, made amends for his nation's sins, bad deeds, whatever they were. I'm not that big on, I don't know what Saul did. But whatever he did, it was bad enough that the people of Israel were inflicted with a famine because of it. And the only way to restore that, to restore the justice, to restore nature back to the balance, back to Ma'at, was for the leader of the nation, as the representative of that government, to break bread and make peace. So we all need to be telling Uncle Sam, and I mean the real original, the white man, Uncle Sam with the long white beard. I ain't talking about Samuel Jackson in the Super Bowl. We all need to let Uncle Sam know about 2 Samuel 21, 1 through 14. We can also flip the page and jump on over to Numbers 5, from 6 to 7. When a man or a woman wrongs another in any way, hello, slave masters, hello, overseers, hello, ship captains. When a man or a woman wrongs another in any way, and so is unfaithful to the Lord, they all did this under the auspices of being Christians. If they were heathens when they came over here and then one day they found religion, maybe you could make an argument that it was before their newfound religion, but they came over here as Christians doing that. They went to Africa as Christians. They went to Africa as holier than thou, Bible believing Christians. So they were being unfaithful to their Lord. That person is guilty and must confess the sin they have committed. So America as a whole is guilty, and they must confess the sins that they have committed. This is only right if you want to be a Christian nation. That's all there is to it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That passage goes on to say they must make full restitution. Full restitution. Not a percentage, full restitution for the wrong that they have done, and add a fifth of the value to it, and give it all to the person they have wronged. Hello, slave masters, sons of slave masters, daughters of slave masters. Hello, overseers, sons and daughters of the Confederate. Hello, Uncle Sam. Hello, orangutan. Hello, muscat. Y'all in charge. The debt is in your hands. Section 3, response number 3. I'm going to go on. I'm just going to roll on through these. Now, if you want, like I said, now, if you're on YouTube, if you come to YouTube and you join the chat and you want to challenge me or you want to add something to it, I'm more than welcome to let that be a part of the show. But you can only do that on YouTube. So you can watch me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, fan base, what have you. But I would need you to come on over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective if you want to join in either verbally on the screen or if you want to get into the chat room and we could duke it out there. You can paste something in the chat and I'll put it on the screen. But let me go to his third, Fried Fish's third piece. Fried Fish said, well, we call this the canceling debt misinterpretation. Because Fried Fish claimed that Deuteronomy 15:1 says debts should be canceled every 7 years. So reparations should be forgotten. Okay, I would imagine that the sons and daughters of the Confederates, I would imagine that the sons and daughters of the American white supremacy, racism, slavery system would hold on dearly to this passage. But here's my rebuttal. Because 15, same book, Deuteronomy, passage 15, section 12 to 15. If any of your people sell themselves to you and serve you 6 years, in the 7th year, you must let them go free. And when you release them, do not send them away empty-handed. Supply them liberally from your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress. Give to them as the Lord your God has blessed you. So again, yeah, you want to harp on 15:1 that says the debt is eliminated, but you don't care about the part there. The only reason that it would say that, the only reason it says that the debt should be eliminated is because when you let them go free, you give them everything that's owed to them. You can't have it both ways. You got to hold up your end of the bargain for the other part to remain true or valid. So had you given your slaves, had you given the enslaved Africans everything your Bible tells you to give them, of course the debt would be free. Had you let them go after 7 years and you gave them liberally from your flock, your threshing floor, and your wine press, of course the debt would be free and canceled. But you didn't do that, which there again lies the multiplicity, the multiplication, the re-emphasis of your sin. And just let it be known, debt cancellation doesn't apply to stolen labor. It applies to loans, but not stolen labor. When freeing the enslaved, God commands they be compensated. So once again, I love this cherry picking of this book. And this is so one-sided. Like, even if you wanted to build a strong argument, you would have to, if you're going to drop Deuteronomy 15:1, but you're not going to read Deuteronomy 15:12 to 15. Like, if this was a high school or a college class and you turned this in, your professor would be laughing at you. They may not laugh in your face. They're going to red ink your paper to death. And then they're going to straight face give it to you with a big old flag on it. F, try again. But that was his third one. Remember, he wrote 18 parts, really thinking he was going to get somewhere. And then he jumped up and said, aside from all of that, the U.S. economy did not even benefit from slavery. Now, aside from being completely wrong about the Bible, aside from being not too scholarly about the Bible, he's now showing his hand to be not that studious about American history and about American economics. If the U.S. economy did not benefit from slavery, then they wouldn't be trying to ban this information out of the textbooks all across this country. They wouldn't be trying to rewrite the history to cover it up. But I'll pause with the biblical information for a hot second, because I feel like this would be a perfect time for me to share another proverb, another West African proverb, this time from the Akan ethnicity. The Akan is an ethnicity in Ghana, formerly called the Gold Coast when they was coming over there raiding, when they was coming over there undermining the continent and stealing the labor, sinning against their Lord. But the Akan say, even the sharpest knife cannot carve its own handle. Even the sharpest knife cannot carve its own handle. What does this mean? How does this relate to what you're talking about? Well, America cannot escape accountability for the wealth that it built on exploitation. The sharpest knife is great. Salute you for being the sharpest knife. You had help. No one can even use the sharpest knife if it doesn't have a handle. America cannot use its riches. America would not have its riches if it didn't have somebody that assisted in creating it. What is that assistance? That's enslaved labor of the African. That's that free labor of the African. So even the sharpest knife cannot carve its own handle. You got there because of somebody else. Ta-da! Us, the descendants of the enslaved Africans, the Africans now who are having an American experience. And it is one hell of an American experience. I'm here to tell you. I hope y'all participating in the boycott. Tell me something. Let me know. Are y'all participating in the boycott? I ain't hardly even went to the stores today. I know I ain't purchased nothing because I ain't hardly even go anywhere. Are y'all participating in the boycott? Say something in the chat. So anyhow, now I'm gonna get off the proverbs, the proverbial moments of wisdom. Let me return to this Bible, to this biblical expose, so to speak. Because this idea, okay, the U.S. economy did not benefit from slavery. Well, let me just remind you, if you are operating under this false narrative, your Lord says, woe to him who builds his house by unrighteousness and his upper rooms by injustice, who makes his neighbors serve him for nothing and does not give him his wages. Jeremiah 22:13. So you can operate under this false narrative all you want to, but as a Christian, as a Christian nation, your Lord got some truths for you that you should be thinking about. And that ain't the only one. So fried fish and all you anti-reparationists of whatever hue you might be, turn in your book to the book of James 5:4, where it says, look, the wages you fail to pay, the wages you fail to pay the workers who moved your fields, the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The wages you fail to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. Now, again, I'm not a Bible believer, But how you gonna come at somebody and try to use the Bible to justify not giving reparations when all through your book, your Lord is telling you you owe reparations? Even in Exodus 12:35 to 36, it says, before leaving Egypt, the Israelites took gold and silver as reparations for their enslavement. I'll take my 40 acres and a mule and gold bars today, thank you. I don't know where Fried Fish is, and he's welcome to come on up and join the chat. Or anybody else that's an anti-reparationist. Now, if you're an anti-reparationist and you're not a Christian, hey, I ain't got nothing to say to you. At least not tonight. I said something to you the other night in the other conversation about reparations. Because on that night, I was talking about the legal ramifications, the legal frameworks for getting reparations. So we got Old Testament passages, we got New Testament passages, and we only up through the fourth comment from this anti-reparationist individual. Now let me pause for a second because I'm getting some notifications buzzing off. Okay, so I'll check with those a little bit later. So again, we got Old Testament, we got New Testament, and we get into this. Now I'm gonna get to this next one. Fried Fish claimed you can't inherit the debts of your ancestors. So why inherit the unpaid labor claims? Okay, Fried Fish. Well, why not? How about this? You answer me this. Proverbs 13:22 says, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteousness. What 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 does this mean? What does this mean? Wealth doesn't vanish, it passes through generations. So do debts. So again, now, what debt would the enslaved African have? What debt would the enslaved African have? There is no debt that the enslaved African has. So we clear on that side of the ledger, so to speak. There is no debt for us to. The only debt that we have, we are indebted to fight for reparations. That's the debt that we have, and we're honoring that debt in multiple ways because we are still fighting for reparations. Some of us have chosen to fight for reparations along the side, or to ride on the Trump train and fight for reparations. Personally, I don't know how, I don't know where the brain is when it takes such a stance. But some of us are riding with Trump thinking that platinum plan that he ain't talked about in almost 5, 6, 7, I don't know, 8 years. Most of us are trying to figure out a way to get reparations manifested and established through the Democratic Party. I'm not necessarily saying that's the most appropriate and the best way. It might be the best way available, but it ain't the best way at all. I will have you know there are some of us working through international spaces, the way Malcolm X did. Malcolm X wanted to work on, to fight for, to call on, demand reparations through the United Nations, through the UN. And there are people today who are still picking up that cause. As a matter of fact, on March 15th, there's going to be a town hall roundtable discussion with not the UN, but with the AN, the African Union, about reparations. And they're talking about reparations for the continent, and they're talking about reparations for the descendants of the enslaved Africans in the Western Hemisphere, whether they be living in Canada, the United States, Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Jamaica, Haiti, all of us. Everyone that was brought over here, everyone that's descended from the enslavery system, the Maafa, over here, zone 6. Look it up. Zone 6 of the African Union. The AU, I should say. I think I said IAN, the AU. So Malcolm X was going to the UN. At the time, the AU wasn't established, I believe. There are brothers and sisters currently right now planning to go to the AU's March 15th meeting to discuss reparations. I plan to do something. I don't know what I'm going to do. If I can, I'll cover it and share it, live stream it from my own show or something else. But I'm going to see what I can do to get involved with that. Shout out to, again, I'm sorry if I mess up your name. Shout out to Gina, who joined on Instagram. I can't really see my TikTok peoples. I do apologize. Keep hitting the like button. Keep sharing the stream. Share this if you think any part of this conversation is worthy and needed. You may have some devout Christian friends, family members who don't think that there's anything in the Bible that would lend credence to the argument for reparations. Well, tell them they are sadly mistaken. Again, this is not a conversation about religion. You might want to say this is Bible study, but this ain't the kind of Bible study because I want you to believe. I don't care what you believe. You can be an atheist. You can practice traditional African spirituality. Big up to all of those who do. You can be a Muslim. You could be a Christian. You could be a Catholic. You could be a Rasta. Big ups to all of them. But if you are in any way affiliated, connected, associated, or have had to deal with Bible believers, and you want to weigh in on this conversation about reparations, I'm giving you quite a few passages for you to read, think about, and throw at those people. The last thing that should be said is the Bible does not support reparations. You could just be on anti-reparationist and just stand on that. I just don't believe you should get it, period, in the story. But don't go try to use in a book that's filled with stuff about getting reparations. Let me continue. Telling people that they need to look up the book of Nehemiah, chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. In it, another story, another illustration, another analogy, another example. But in that story, the Israelites demanded repayment and justice from their fellow Jews who had taken advantage of them through unjust labor. So again, people say, well, what they got to do with us? I'll be the first to tell you it ain't got nothing to do with us. But I know there's some of us that believe we are the original Jews. Now, I'm not going to crap on you. If that's your belief, that's fine. But if you believe you are the original Jews, you have every right to look at these other Ashkenazis and say, you've taken advantage of me. You owe reparations. It says it right here in the book. If you're not one of those, if you're just a regular Christian and again, isn't this book supposed to be the exemplar, the exemplar, the example? So if you have this book that's supposed to be your word from God, then God is giving you an example of, well, if I told y'all to follow these people, if I told y'all to live your life the way these people live their life, well, if the Jews in the book can demand reparations, then Black people who think the book has any value and merit can demand reparations in the same manner. And Nehemiah, who is considered a righteous leader, once he heard the demands, he ordered full restitution. So why don't you go send that on up the pike to DC and let Orangutan read it. Let Muscat read it. Let Shady Vance read it. Tell them read that and sign HR 40 into effect. Tell them edit HR 40 so that we ain't got to do the studies because the studies is done. The UN did the study. The AU's doing a study right now. California has done a study. The studies are done. Dr. William Darity did a study. Ta-Nehisi Coates did a study. All they got to do is pick the paperwork up. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. So again, fried fish and all the anti-reparationists. And let me also add to this, who else I got a bone to pick with? Because there's another group of people, and these are mostly black people, and they say they are in favor of reparations. I've joined some of their channels, I've watched some of their shows, but then over time, I begin to realize they're not really in favor of reparations. They just in favor of talking about reparations. And the reason I say that is they say they're in favor of reparations, but they try to influence you to vote for people who don't want to give you reparations. So what gives? How is it that you can say, yeah, we should be demanding reparations? Let's vote for the Republicans. They don't want it. Now, I'm not trying to say we should all be Democrats. 92% of black women voted for them. 80% of black men voted for them. Technically, we already knee deep in the Democratic Party. We're not fighting hard enough ourselves for this reparations package. We need to start demanding it and letting them know. Now, we voted for you. Y'all gonna get it done. But okay, I digress. That should be the name of my show. Instead of the proper perspective. I digress. But let me get this show on the road. Fried Fish came again, part 6 of 18. He said seeking reparations is about greed, not justice. Now, if that don't beat all, the pot calling the kettle black. Because people who don't want to give up, people who don't want reparations to be paid, they just being greedy. Take a look at the American government budget. Look at all the expenditures before or after Muscat with Doge, because Doge ain't doing nothing. Doge ain't saving money. I know he says he's saving money, but they already got the reports out there that say, yep, he lied. They Maury Povich in the everything that he say, and the lie detector determined that was a lie. But back to fried fish and the anti-reparationist people. Seeking reparations is about greed, not justice. Well, then you tell me why it says in Proverbs 3:27, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, especially when it is in your power to act. So maybe this goes over fried fish's head. This goes literally to the representatives, in Congress, the representatives in the Senate, those who sit on the Supreme Court, and a little funky squad up there in the White House that we built. Because they clearly have the power to act. They should not be withholding good from those to whom it is due. The reparations is the good. We are the ones to whom it is due. So again, I say this whole Bible, the entire book is replete with justifications, encouragements, commands, and demands for a Christian nation to pay its debt to black people. And then you jump on over, let's hit what is it, the New Testament, because I know a lot of some, and I've already covered it, but I know a lot of people be like, well, we're not under the rules of the Old Testament. Well, Luke 19:8-9 says Zacchaeus, upon realizing his wrongdoing, gave back 4 times what he had taken unjustly. And Jesus affirmed this action as righteous. Now, surely you Christians want to be affirmed as righteous in Jesus' eyes, right? Am I correct? You want to be affirmed as righteous in the eyes of Jesus, then you need to do what Zacchaeus did. Give back what you have taken 4 times over. So don't tell me you're a good Christian and you don't believe in reparations. Because then I just know, I know what kind of Christian you is. That plantation Christianity. Now, again, what was that? I'm up to like 6. Like I said, he had 6 of 18. Now, and I made some of these responses in writing to him and just decided rather than go back and forth with him, I need to jump on the stick. As I proceed, YouTube.com/@the proper perspective. I really do need y'all to tune in to YouTube.com/@the proper perspective. Let me see the like button getting hit. Let me see the subscriptions increasing. That's what I'd like to know. Will you do that for me? Now, I got some additional passages. And these additional passages are, to some extent, commandments from the Bible. Leviticus 25:10. Now, again, you new age folk that want to say we don't live under the Old Testament. I'd like to see you get rid of the Old Testament. If you don't live under the Old Testament, then why don't you just delete that part of the book? Let me not get into the Bible debates. Leviticus 25:10. Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you is to return to your family property and to your own clan. Now, what? What does that mean? You want to jump on here and tell me what it means? That's fine. I might listen. I'll listen. But the key point here is the Jubilee year was a divine law. Yeah, I had to look it up. I told you I'm not that into it. The Jubilee year was a divine law where stolen or lost wealth had to be restored. The Jubilee is a divine law. It's a divine law. I got to say that again and again. Where stolen or lost wealth. Now, there's all kind of documentaries about how much wealth was stolen from Black people in general because of slavery, but then even after the Emancipation Proclamation. There's a plethora of documentaries showing, explaining, validating how even the few of us that did find a way to acquire land, to acquire wealth, had that land and that wealth stolen again. And your Bible says it must be restored to the families. This principle means that the wealth wrongfully taken must be returned. A direct case for reparations. What about all of the communities that were stolen, burnt down, destroyed, so they could build a lake? Lake Lanier, y'all heard of? So that they could build a park. Central Park in New York City, y'all heard of? So again, your Bible tells you you need to be working on getting reparations done. Now, when we jump on over, just let it be known, let it be clear. God judges nations that oppress and refuse to restore what they took. Again, I'm not saying that this is an absolute fact. I'm saying this is what's in the book. This is what is built into your belief system if you are a Bible believer, if you are an Abrahamic religious traditional practitioner. Because whether you call yourself a Jew, a Christian, even Muslims still believe that the Bible is an authoritative source. Well, in the Bible, God judges nations, and judging ain't never a good thing. Let's see. Hold on. I'm getting a message. Okay, yeah, I'm getting a message, but I'm not that comfortable with I'm getting a message on TikTok trying to get me to join another live or something like that. I'll be honest with you. I'm not that familiar with TikTok. I only go live on TikTok to try to generate more traffic to my YouTube page. I got a couple people trying to tell me they're going to school me in the background. But when they do that, we'll see. But right now, I'm a YouTube type person. So, hold on. As I was saying, For those who are biblical believers, just let it be known, Isaiah 10, section 1 to 3. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people. What will you do on the day of reckoning? Now, again, this would only even matter if you really are a believer. I don't think Muscat is a believer. I don't think orangutan is a believer. I don't think most envelopians are believers. But most envelopians say they are believers. Well, put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. Clearly, your Bible tells you there's all kind of trouble if you don't do right by the people you have wronged. So read Isaiah 10, 1 to 3. Not only does that apply to our demand for reparations, it also applies to all this crazy mess that they're doing right now today. Clearly, I'm more focused on reparations. But we getting hit and we suffering from the mess they're doing today too. So if you are a Bible believer, you can throw this up there at them about what they're doing now with Doge. So my key point is, especially, after Emancipation Proclamation, you had Jim Crow, redlining, convict leasing, modern day systemic racism, the school to prison pipeline, the stop and frisk policies that orangutan has brought back. These are all oppressive decrees. So this verse, Isaiah 10, 1 to 3, it warns you people that God will hold the nation accountable. Now, I'm not the one that's going to sit around and wait for this. I'm not the one that's going to sit around and believe in this. I'm simply saying, don't come at us telling us that the Bible doesn't support reparations. Because clearly it does. Shout out to Jod Khan 57 for joining on Instagram. Let's see. See what else we got going here. So when you hear white Christians talk about they scared, when you hear white Christians talk about they scared that one day we as black people might take over and do to them what they did to us, at least be mindful that they say this because they know what's in this book. They know it better than you do. Now we can be like, oh no, we ain't about that. They are not going to believe you because they know what's in their heart. But you should at least be able to throw these passages at them and let them know, you know what's in this book too. They need to be fighting harder for reparations than we do. They should be on the front line saying, pay the people what you owe, what we owe. Because if we don't pay them people what we owe, the Lord gonna get us. So let's jump on over to that last book in the Bible, Revelation 18, 5 to 6. For her sins have piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Pour her double portion from her own cup. So when you hear white Christians talk about they scared that we as black people might do to them what they did to us, just be aware that they say this because they know what's in this book better than you do. Just be aware. The book tells us to do to them what they did to us. Don't come at me with nothing about forgiveness. There's a time and place for everything. And I'm not saying you shouldn't forgive. But I'm also say you should be trying to practice Revelation 18, 5, 6. For her sins have piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double of what she has done. Pour her double portion from her own cup, or give us our reparations, and we'll leave you alone. Shout out. Now, let me give a shout out to OG Make Fire. Fire good. Now, he asked the question, what? He's in the chat. He's specifically in the chat on YouTube, my home base. So I got his question on the screen. Now I gotta say, I don't know what you're asking what about. So if you could extend that question, put another statement in there so I'll know how to answer it, because I'm not sure what you're saying what to. But again, my key point right now: when a nation builds its wealth through oppression, God demands it be paid. Hold on one second. Yep, TikTok trying to play this game with me. And TikTok make you tap in once you've been live for a certain amount of time. They make you tap in, or they're gonna cancel your show. When a nation builds its wealth through oppression, God demands it be paid back. Reparations aren't just a demand, they are a biblical mandate. So, to fried fish and all of the anti-reparationists out there that are Christians or that are Bible believers, what you gonna do about these biblical verses that tell you you need to pay Black people their reparations? That's the question of the day. Now, I may take a pause. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. I'm still waiting on OG Make Fire Good to further break down his question. But just let me, like it says on the screen, like, share, and subscribe. YouTube.com/@theproperperspective. If you find anything in this conversation that was worthy, that was interesting, that was informative, please like, share, and subscribe. Send this to a friend. If somebody wants to debate me, I don't really do debates, but if you want to have a conversation, if you want to have a spirited conversation about these biblical passages, I'm open for it. Like I said, fried fish came at me with an 18-part analysis of why the Bible says we don't deserve it. And he ignored all of these passages that clearly show we do. So while I'm having this little pause from the biblical readings, I would like to bring up the fact that if you do know your African ancestry, or if you do know about the African ethnicities that came over here, then you would know about the Yoruba from Nigeria. There is a Yoruba proverb that says, "A fool is like a warrior. A fool is like a warrior who forgets his shield at home." A fool is like a warrior who forgets his shield at home. Now, why am I bringing this up? Like I said, I like to use the wisdom of the ancestors. We have ancestors who are from the Yoruba ethnicity. We have ancestors that are from the Igbo ethnicity. So I like to impart their wisdom. I like to keep it in my own life personally, but I like to use it in my lectures, in my streams, in my lives. Even when I'm teaching in classrooms, I use these proverbs. So a fool is like a warrior who forgets his shield at home. Why do I say that? Fried fish, anti-reparationists, Bible believers who try to use the Bible to justify not paying reparations are like fools who leave their warrior shields at home. They arm themselves in the armor of God and forget all of the armor of God said pay reparations. Their arguments are weak and self-defeating, just like a warrior without a shield. So, and I say that specifically for this next claim, because Fried Fish says reparations would punish people who never owned slaves. This is a weak argument. This is like a warrior without a shield. The US government and many corporations, Ta-Nehisi Coates did one of the best breakdowns of the corporations, but the US government and many corporations profited from slavery. And they profited from systemic racism then as much as they do now today. All this means they owe restitution. They owe restitution. They owe restitution. Who is they? The US government and the many corporations. Now, one of those corporations includes the institution of the church in all its shapes, forms, fashions. The Protestants and all their branches, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Baptists, the Catholics. I don't even know all of their names, the Methodists, and so on and so forth. They all had a hand in this. This is not the John, the Tom, Dick, and Harry who work at Wendy's, McDonald's, and Sally's. This is the federal government. These are major corporations that owe this money. These are the people who are responsible for the GI Bill that skipped black people, redlining that shut black people out of banking and housing, and other federal policies that have created generational advantages for white Americans while excluding black people. Reparations address these ongoing systemic harms. So to say reparations would punish people who never owned slaves, reparations corrects people who are descended from the slaves, but who were never explicitly on the plantations themselves, but who have been harmed by all of the systems the government has put into place to keep them in an enslaved status. Now, I'll give you an analogy. If a company stole wages from workers and the original CEO died, if a company stole wages from workers and the original CEO died, the company still got to owe that money. They still owe that back pay. They still owe it. The new CEO comes in. He can't say, hey, that happened before I got here, so I ain't got to handle it. I ain't got to manage it. They ain't got nothing to do with me. Oh, yeah, it do, bro. You broke it. You bought it. You broke it. You fix it. You didn't break it, but you bought it, and it was broke. When you bought it, you fix it. Reparations addresses these ongoing systemic harms. Period and end of story. Even if today's executives didn't commit the original crime, they are responsible for it. Just like when the president, when whoever is elected as the president, when they walk into the White House, when they put their hand on the Bible, or like orangutan, they don't put their hand on the Bible, when they walk into the White House and they assume the responsibilities, there's things they just gonna have to do. Why? Because they sit in the chair. They sit in the chair. If by some miracle there was to be someone elected and they walked into the White House and they said, I don't agree with Israel, it won't matter. There's a contract on the desk, bruh. This country is obligated to uphold its responsibilities. So he or she would just have to keep on doing. So that's my thing. So again, to try to say reparations would punish people who never owned slaves. Did reparations to Japanese people punish white people that didn't put the cuffs on them? No. When the Japanese got their reparations, was all white people punished? No. The government was responsible for that. And whatever money they got that came out of the government pot, There ain't a white person on any strip of land in America that looked up and was like, my bank deposit is $20 less. Them Japs must have got that daggone reparations. No. This ain't your money. So stay out of it. Now, Fried Fish also came and said most white people never owned slaves, so they shouldn't have to pay. Once again, I say, a fool is like a warrior who leaves home without his shield. None of these arguments of his hold any water. But I'm going to continue with my rebuttal. If you're watching on Fanbase, if you're watching on TikTok, if you're watching on Instagram, come on over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective. I need you in the chat room. I appreciate your presence no matter where you're at, but I would love it if you came on over to YouTube. Even if you're on Facebook, I would appreciate it if you came on over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective. I guess OG Make Fire Good ain't gonna give me the second part to his question, so I'm gonna leave that alone for a minute. Let me see. I'm getting another message. So excuse me for the pauses. Sometimes you got to handle some things. But let me continue with this rebuttal. The U.S. government and its institutions enforce slavery. They enforce segregation. They enforce racist policies. They stole generational wealth from Black Americans. Taxes fund all government obligations. This is no different from how taxpayers fund other legal settlements for past harms. Like I said, look at the Japanese. Look at all the money that's going out to Ashkenaziville anyhow. So like I said, the Japanese Americans receive reparations for the internment camp fiasco. Even though not all Americans directly participated in their oppression. So if the Japanese can get their goods, they got their money from Uncle Sam. Now, there may have been some anti-reparationists back then saying, we don't think it should be paid. Ain't nobody listening to them. The Japanese Americans still got their money, whether white folk complained and cried about it or not, because it didn't come from their own personal bank accounts. The U.S. government sends billions in aid to Israel, despite having never committed any direct harm to them people. So if you want to be real about it, and if you want to do it in such a way where the American people, their taxes are not further utilized in a way that they don't like, all you really got to do is redirect the money that's going to Israel to the reparations for Black people. They're not another penny under the Doge conspiracy. Not another penny is being wasted in something it shouldn't be. If you was really about that Doge, then you would be like, okay, we need to take that money that's going to Israel. Netanyahu don't need that money. Black Americans do. Ever heard a Republican say that? Ever heard a MAGA person say that? Likewise, Americans have funded veterans benefits, and not all Americans wanted that to happen. They funded corporate bailouts. Remember George Bush, too big to fail. And the foreign aid is through the roof. None of these require direct personal responsibility from every taxpayer. Reparations would simply be another federal expenditure addressing past injustices. So you can't miss me with this whole your bank account is going to suffer if Black Americans get reparations. You're either foolish or you're smoking something, or both. But let me continue. Because fried fish came along and said, slavery ended 150 years ago. Why bring it up now? What rock you been sleeping under? That's my question. What rock have you been sleeping under? Black Americans have been demanding reparations and fighting for reparations and trying to figure out what's the perfect political mechanisms to enact reparations ever since the Emancipation Proclamation. We've been getting the runaround. We've been getting tricked and duped, but we've been fighting for it ever since the chains came off. The U.S. government on any and all levels have just been ignoring the demands and kicking the can down the road. So this is not a, oh, now you want to bring it up scenario. What rock have you been sleeping under? You need to go back and crawl up underneath it. H.R. 40, the bill to study reparations, has been stuck in committee for over 40 years. That's an example of us demanding and fighting and working for reparations. It's not a now thing. So the idea that we suddenly started talking about it, we suddenly started bringing it up, you just suddenly started paying attention. Go back to sleep, Rip Van Winkle, because we don't need you. But for the rest of the Johnny come latelys, thank you for paying attention. Reparations aren't just about slavery. Let it be known. It's not just about slavery. Now, I like to make the bulk of my argument about slavery itself, but it really isn't about slavery alone. Because you cannot ignore Jim Crow, redlining, racial massacres. They burned down whole towns. They ran whole families out of town. Stolen wealth. All of this continues to affect Black communities today. I think one of the other stats is we own 1/2 of 1% of the nation's wealth at the end of slavery. And today we own 1/2 of 1% of the nation's wealth. That's because of all of those systems that were put into place after slavery. So the reparations are due. You got to repair what you messed up. You know, survivors of the 1921 Tulsa massacre are still alive today. Well, don't quote me on that one. I think it may be one or two that are still left alive, or one they may have passed. I hope not, but you know, they were denied the insurance payouts and the government protection from day one, and they struggled they went through their entire lives fighting for just the insurance payouts off of that. So the effects of systemic oppression are measurable. It's not pie in the sky. Black Americans still have significantly less inherited wealth. You can't inherit something that was stolen. If your father never got it, if your grandfather never got the stolen goods returned, then they can't leave it to you. This is all based on policies that were put into place to prevent us from accumulating wealth, from accumulating assets, from having something to pass down. Now, come on over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective. I'm going to shift gears a little bit because now I'm going to hit you with Fried Fish's next claim. And this is a particularly interesting one because not only have I heard this one a lot from anti-reparationists on the envelopian side of the human family, but I hear this more and more today among the melanated families, the melanated brethren. And I think it's a bit foolish, and I'm going to leave it at that. But Fried Fish said, well, what about the African countries that sold slaves? I got a rebuttal for you. Now, this ain't necessarily biblical, so, you know, I'll get back to the biblical stuff when I get back to his quoting. But here's my rebuttal. What about the African countries that sold slaves? One, African rulers didn't draft the U.S. Constitution, did they? I don't think they had any say so on that. They didn't. Did African rulers pass the Fugitive Slave Act? Did they? This ain't red herringville. We don't fall for the red herrings. We don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. We don't fall for the distractions. They sure as hell didn't write Jim Crow laws. They didn't write them. They didn't vote for them. They didn't think them up. They didn't suggest them. They had nothing to do with them. They had no earthly idea that they were even being enacted. This is the institutionalized racism that is the birth of, the product of, the maintenance of white supremacy and slavery. That is all Uncle Sam. That is all America's handiwork. That has nothing to do with what Africans did or did not do. Now, to be honest, the historical record is a little sketchy, but I'm not one of those people that's going to try to dance around it. There were some Africans who were involved in those transactions. I will say those Africans who were involved were, for the most part, breaking the law in African nations. Just like we got black people today that break laws. But just because there's some black people breaking laws today don't mean everybody has to be held accountable. So as for the Africans who sold their own people, this weak argument, nice try. Let's talk about some facts. What most African societies practiced back then when they were doing these transactions was closer to indentured servitude. They did not have a system of multi-generational, skin color based human cattle systemic oppression. That's an American invention. That's what America cooked up. In the indentured servitude system in Africa, if you were put into service of someone else, you were put into service for a certain amount of time, not your whole life. Your children did not belong to the person you were put into service to. Your children belonged to you, and your children went on about their business. A lot of the indentured servitude systems were running just like that Jubilee thing, 7 years. Even if you were in debt to somebody, you would work your debt off in 7 years, and then you go about your business. So what does that mean? So when they were conducting these transactions, they were under the impression, I'm going to give you to this person, you'll go over there, you'll work for them for 7 years, and then you go about your business. They didn't have this concept of, no, I own you, I rename you, I rebrand you. You are my chattel. This is the American system in which we come up out of. Africans weren't selling people into what the U.S. turned into slavery because they didn't know nothing about it. Nothing like that had ever existed. The transatlantic slave trade introduced a level of brutality that was nearly unheard of in human history. Africans who sold captives had no clue that in America, slavery meant your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and every descendant you ever would have been responsible for creating would be permanently owned like livestock. So let's be clear. The African rulers had zero control over how the U.S. treated enslaved Africans once they got here, once we got here. That is nothing. That reparations is about the treatment over here. African rulers had zero control over the lash with which we were whipped. They had zero control over the breeding farms Again, an invention created over here. They had no control over the family separations, the labor camps, the lynchings. All of that is the American product. So, like I keep saying, you bought it, you broke it, you fix it. Quit trying to offload responsibility onto people who had nothing to do with your centuries long racial caste dehumanization system. That's what reparations is about. The U.S. government and American corporations profited immensely from slavery. They are the ones responsible for repayment. Not Jack and Diane, not Karen. Right now, today, orangutan and muscat, because they sit in the seats of power. It's their responsibility. If a thief sells a stolen car, the buyer of the stolen car is still responsible for making things right to the original owner. Let that sink in. Bible or no Bible. Now, I've gone through quite a few. I don't even think I got all of Fried Fish's 18 remarks. I honestly got a little lost because the page just kept going down and down and down. But I tried to hit them all. I hope he see this video and try to come back at me. But again, in honor of Black History Month, I wanted to close this month out with a show about reparations. So it kind of works out. It came all together without my planning. If you know me, you know I don't even like planning, because every time you make a plan, God starts to laugh. But let me say this as a closing, so to speak. The Bible is clear. Justice demands reparations for stolen labor and historical wrongs. Those who claim otherwise are either misinformed or willfully ignoring this crime. Now, before I go, I got to hit you with another proverb. This one from the Wolof ethnicity, Senegal, Senegambia, the Gambia. When the spider web unites, it can tie up a lion. When the spider web unites, it can tie up a lion. What does this mean? Break it down with the proper perspective. Black Americans armed with knowledge and unity will break through the system of denial and claim justice. When we, just like today, I hope today we are united in this economic boycott. Just like today, we ain't spending a dollar. We ain't spending a penny with, at least not with anything owned by white folk. If you got to go somewhere, go to a Black business. Shout out to Norfolk, Virginia, because they got their own Black-owned grocery store. I wish Richmond, Virginia had one. We got some stores, but we ain't got no grocery store. But we shouldn't be. This is the unity. This is the spider web that unites. When we work together, we can tie up a lion. And clearly, y'all know who the lion is. That's the government trying not to pay us reparations. Let's see. So before I get out of here, like, share, subscribe. Play this video again so you can write down all those biblical passages and share them with your friends. But I thank you for showing up. I thank you for tuning in. And let me see if there's anybody else. Okay, nobody in the chat. I got my first strike yesterday. I did a stream, and in the stream I was discussing Muhammad Ali, and they struck my channel for it. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't share my screen tonight like I normally do. But I am going to share my screen now. And I'm going to get on up out of here. Thank you for tuning in on Instagram, Fanbase, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube.com/@theproperperspective. Please come on over to my YouTube page, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Like, share, and subscribe this channel. And check out my theme song.
Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective.
The proper perspective.
So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. Shabazz, break it down with the proper